All right. Hello, everyone. This is my first live stream. Why not? I'll share with you my screen. Predominantly, I'll share with you my purpose for being here today. I'm 37 years old. I have $0. I don't have a bank account. Don't have a car or transportation. I got no job references. I'm recently a 2-time convicted felon. And like I said, I'm 37. This is my. I was just released from jail about 6 weeks, 24th. And I went into jail from the streets and I exited with basically nothing. Thankfully, I've been able to have a generous family. They've gotten me a computer, a phone, some clothes, and I've gotten on some government social safety nets, such as food stamps and Medicaid. And my housing comes from a residential treatment program for a probation status instead of having a health court, which means I have to participate in going to court weekly and then bi-weekly while undergoing treatment for bipolar disorder. And and through this year-long process, this year-long program, so long as I successfully complete it, I'm basically free of all future probation. So within 12 to 15 months, I'll be a completely free man, still have a record, but I will be free. And I'll also have this funny little thing. Be able to see this. But this is my court document that reads, as of the date of this letter, you owe $100 towards your total outstanding balance of $655,427.69. Please forward payment immediately. So I'll be a free man, but supposedly I have $655,000 to pay off in restitution. They may be wondering what on earth happened to this guy, especially if you know a little bit more where I came from. I grew up in a nice area, well-to-do family, had a lot of friends in high school, no problems, graduated the top 10% of my class. Went to Penn State, main campus, got a degree in finance. I had an internship at Microsoft corporate headquarters out in Washington State. I actually met Bill Gates at one of the intern events there back in the summer of 2007. Had another internship in Philadelphia at an executive search consulting firm, Korn Ferry International, did really well there. Once I graduated from Penn State, I went to New York, worked at Bloomberg for a few years in a sales and analytics consultant role. I covered Dallas and Texas predominantly for my region, and I flew off in Dallas and saw clients in investment banks, hedge funds, broker dealers, family wealth management offices, and I provided them with the Bloomberg software and the Bloomberg solution suite of products that we offer to them. I was reasonably compensated. I had excellent benefits, flew down first class. I stayed in suites at the St. Regis and the W Hotel down in Houston and Dallas. Had an excellent 401k matching policy. Within about a year and a half, 2 years of working there, I socked away about $100,000 in just my 401k savings. By the time I was 24, I remember this specifically. I had all my accounts aggregated to a certain personal wealth management organization. And I was in Hanoi, Vietnam, where I was on a contract for a volunteer experience. And I had a personal net worth, including my retirement, of about $400,000 as a 24-year-old. And now I'm 37 and I'm totally broke. Not even broke. I'm in debt nearly $700,000. So what happened? Well, what I didn't really tell you was that Come college, I became incredibly anxious, was battling extreme bouts of depression, had my moments that a person could now say were manic or mania related. I went to a psychiatrist in college. I was diagnosed with bipolar. I thought psychiatry was a bunch of bullshit, so I didn't accept it. Took the meds for maybe a month or two and then moved on. Buckled through my studies, knew I had to graduate, didn't want to fall far behind, so I did. Um, Graduated. I told you I got a job in Bloomberg, New York. Even when I was working in New York, I could hardly wake up in the mornings. I'd go down and to stay in the hotels in Texas at some of these for some of my clients. And I mean, sometimes I call out my first client at eight, and that was scheduled for 8 or 9 in the morning, and I call out and stay in bed until 10 a.m. before I could crawl out of bed. Never before have I ever exhibited behavior like that, where I'd be literally like skimping on the company's dime or skipping classes. Or college was a little different, but skipping classes in high school or cheating on exams in college or something of the sort. Couldn't get out of bed, couldn't do it. And I kept, since I had the money, I could avoid the problem. And I resigned from Bloomberg. I took another job at an ad network. I got laid off there within 6 or 7 months. And then I didn't know what to do. And I knew that I didn't want to try to figure it out, spending $1,700 a month in rent in Manhattan. So I went back to my parents' place, and that's when I got an idea to do this international volunteer experience. So I did the volunteer experience. I was over in Vietnam. I was on contract for 6 weeks, and then I used the remaining period of the time that I was over there, which was 6 months, to just travel throughout Southeast Asia and India. I was kind of telling myself I was really into Eastern philosophy and Buddhism at this point. I wanted to seek enlightenment and whatever. So that's what I did. And I traveled around Asia. I traveled around Vietnam, Singapore, Cambodia, Thailand. And then I popped over to India. And I still was experiencing extreme bouts of depression. But I could justify my rent. I could find a place, hotel accommodations for $15 a night. And I could justify kind of just not doing anything for 5 days. And that brought me back into my mid-20s. And now I'm beginning to go off the rails. I'm off track. I don't have anything. It's been a couple of years since I had a corporate job. I was volunteering, but what does that really mean? Where can I go with that? And I ended up going back to my birth city, Princeton, New Jersey. And I thought there was it was about 20 minutes from where I was living with my parents in Pennsylvania. And I thought, I recently read Joseph Campbell, The Hero's Journey, and I thought there was some symbolic significance about a person returning to their birth journey and how the birth city and how that would be essentially like the beginning of the hero's journey. And I got in a relationship, still into Eastern philosophies, yoga, Buddhism, etc., Hinduism. Went to a yoga studio, got into a relationship with a woman who owned a yoga studio, took the Buddhism to another level and was very serious about that, was trying to practice non-attachment with my belongings and trying to live a minimalistic life. And I, again, since I was in the relationship, I was justifying to myself that I was doing something productive while still going through my money. I had the money that I was going through, and I was getting anxious. I was getting even though I still had a few $100,000 or a couple $100,000, I began getting how long can this go? I also was in severe chronic pain at this point, and I was like, how long can this continue to go on for? Eventually, I'm not going to have any money, and I didn't feel like I was capable of working for a variety of reasons, for the chronic pain, for the depression. I didn't think I could establish any consistency. And that was a scary thought. I thought I was going to be poor. I thought I was going to be homeless. I thought, how am I going to get it through life? I don't have that much money to sit back on and wait until I die. So the relationship ended up ending, and I, was bad. I went back, left Princeton. I went back to Newtown, Pennsylvania. hung around Newtown for a little bit, may have gotten into like another 6 month relationship with an old person I knew from high school. And then I had it in me for quite a while. I wanted to do a cross country road trip. And eventually one day I had no attachments to like a rental apartment or unit that I was living in. And I got in an argument with my mom and I left her house and I was like, you know what? I'm just leaving. I'm leaving. And why am I doing this? Why am I living here? What am I doing? So I started driving, and I started driving north on 95 towards Maine. Got to Maine, crossed the border. I thought maybe I'll cross the border and go into Canada for a little while and drive through cross country through Canada with the idea of maybe heading into Alaska. Well, my car was dilapidated. I have a missing passenger seat, and I had no suitcases or luggage with me. So the border control agents looked at me. They thought I was totally crazy. They asked me to get out of the car. They took possession of my car. They brought me inside and they basically interrogated me for 2 hours. And they asked me like the last 10 years of my life, what I've been doing, dates, times. And it was crazy. And they concluded I had like a little scrape on my arm from when I was on a hike a few days earlier. And the brush like kind of like scraped my forearm. They thought that was like they concluded that I basically got into an argument with my mom because I told them I got into an argument with my mom, and then I just said, why am I doing this? And they left, that I killed her, that she scraped me with her fingernails, and that was their story. So regardless, they kicked me out of Canada. They didn't let me stay. I went back to the U.S. side of things. I go, all right, now what? The ironic thing is U.S. didn't interrogate me. They didn't think I killed my parents or my mom or whatever. So they let me through, no problem. Yeah, we'll take them back, no problem whatsoever. I had family in Buffalo, New York. So after Maine, I started driving a little southwest, and I went to visit them and just hung out with them for a week and told them my plan where I was like, I just want to like start a new beginning and want to head out west. And they were all for it. And that's what I did. And I cleaned up my car, and I cleaned up, organized my thoughts, and had a little tentative plan. And I picked up a road atlas, and I left their place and I started driving west. And I had a road atlas. I didn't have a smartphone at this time. I was using an old flip phone. And on the road atlas, Nebraska was right in the middle of the atlas. That Nebraska like touched both sides of the page. It was in the crease of the atlas. And I knew if I made it, and I'm coming from Buffalo over here, and I knew if I made it to this side of Nebraska on the fold, psychologically I'd be committed, so I couldn't look back and turn around. So that's what I was aiming for. So, but for about the first like 14 hours, I was just an anxious mess. Like, oh my gosh, why am I doing this? Am I crazy? What am I going to do when I get out there? Blah, 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 blah. And that's what I did. I drove and I made it to Nebraska, the western portion of the state. There's the Scotts Bluff, which is a nice little mountainous area. And then on the other side of Nebraska, it opens up to Wyoming. And once I crossed over into Wyoming and I got on these 80-mile-per-hour highways and I could see the big mountains in the horizon, I felt a sense of freedom and excitement. And I would spend the next, 3-4 weeks driving between Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, and kind of like circling back through that area. And eventually, 4 to 6 weeks later, I was still kind of going to place, trying to find a place that I may like to settle down. I was driving up into northern Montana, and I was in Great Falls, and Great Falls is on the border. And I saw another sign for the border, and I go, let me give this another shot. So I drove north of the border. Border control again asked me to get out of the car. They bring me inside. They don't interrogate me this time. And after about 30, 45 minutes, they inspected my car. They realized it was fine. And they're like, you know what? This guy's all right. And we'll give you a 7-day pass. And they asked me for my destination. And I said, Alaska. And so I was like, I guess I'm going to Alaska. They approved that. I had 7 days to basically go from northern Montana all the way up to the Alaskan highway. And it took a good 7 days. And that's what I ended up doing. I went through Calgary, Banff. I got up to the Alaskan highway, like Washington State's right here. The Alaskan highway is like all the way up here where it begins. The Alaskan highway is almost 1,400 miles. And it begins at mile 0 up here when I've already driven through like all of this terrain. through Canada. It's a lot. I encourage anyone to look at the map. But the Alaskan Highway is awesome too. It's a 2-lane highway through just like superb nature, natural elements. Saw moose, I saw bear on the side of the road. You see the ice of the mountains and lakes, and eventually it dumps you right into Alaska. And so I crossed the border in Alaska on September 7th, 2019. And drove around Alaska. I drove around the few highways that are around there to explore Anchorage, Homer, and Seward, which are two beautiful like boat village towns. I went up to Fairbanks, and then when the winter started rolling in, like October started coming around, it started getting darker and colder. I was like, all right, I got to settle down. So I got signed an apartment in Anchorage for a year. Lived in that apartment. Throughout this process, I was becoming I was a very devout Catholic, almost neurotically so. And I was having these periods where, essentially the whole drive on the Alaskan highway was kind of this like very euphoric, supernatural experience. And sorry, I'm tired right now.